Here are 5 things that I learned about game dev so far. Now, if you've been following my channel, you've seen that I've been playing all the Xbox Game Pass games that I can get my hands on. And the reason why I was doing that is because as an indie game developer myself, I wanted to learn how to, learn more what's out there. Like, cause I've only played AAA titles like my whole life, like the best games, and I love them, but I've never got a chance to explore the games that were kind of just like not AAA, triple B, triple D. So I wanted to share with you 5 tips or 5 things that I've learned about game dev by exploring all those games. So the first thing that I learned about game dev by exploring all those Xbox Game Pass games is that planning is super important. And what I mean by planning is that you should plan your project. If you're making a game, you should plan your project from the beginning all the way to the end, so you know what the goals are along the way. You know what missions and which quests to put in. You know the lore of the environment. You should plan, and the more you plan, the better your idea will be. The more crisp and clean your idea will be. So before you even start touching your computer, you should get a paper and pen or pencil and just go ham. Write your idea all the way out and make sure it's a solid idea on paper. And then you move on to getting busy on the computer. The second thing that I've learned by doing all these game dev studies is that every game does not need to compete with a AAA title. And this was my flaw when I first started game dev. I wanted to make a game, a first-person shooter that just had all these different debris and everything everywhere and all these buildings you can go into, and I was trying to compete with the games that I knew, which were the AAA studios. And the real deal is that these people at these studios have sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people working on the same game, meaning that they have a department that's most likely they have a department that's the debris department, you feel me? And this department only makes debris for the game. So if you don't have all those departments and you're making all the assets yourself, then it's probably not a good idea to try to compete with a AAA title starting off. You want to, kind of get your scope down, a little bit tighter, more concise, something that you can actually do and put out. And you have to realize that people make games about all kinds of things. Like, I've played some crazy games on that Xbox Game Pass, and I would just suggest to you, if you're an indie game developer, just be creative. Like, there's so many ideas out there that have not been touched by games, and they're waiting for you to do it. So the third thing that I've learned from the independent game dev studies is that good mechanics do not always mean that it's a good game. And what I mean by this is that you can have some banging mechanics in your game, like the ideas may be amazing, but when you execute the ideas or when you're playing through the ideas, it's not as fun as the idea sounds. So my suggestion to get rid of that is to make sure that when you're doing a game and when you have a game, make sure that you and anybody close to you, your family or your girlfriend, whoever, can QA the game multiple times, so much. And you have to make sure that the main gameplay loop is actually something fun, something enjoyable, so that the players will continue to play. The fourth thing that I've learned about independent game dev studies through playing all those Xbox games is that the size and the scope really matter. And I was just speaking on this earlier. A one-man team is not going to be able to do the same thing that a AAA team can do. So when you're designing your game, make sure that your size and scope is realistic so that you can actually finish it. It's not necessarily saying that you have to make a small game, because you can make a big game, but you have to be creative enough to fill out that big game and not make it a big, empty, boring space. Quite often, even with the big AAA title, not AAA, but even with the big titles that are out there developed by teams, there's big empty spaces with nothing in it, and that's like, it takes away the immersion that you get when you're playing a game. So just keep that in mind. Even if your game is in one room and that room has a whole bunch of features, like you could pull out the drawers and cut off the wires and all these kind of things, that's more fun than a game that's huge environment with all these different islands with just trees and rocks. You understand? So that's one thing I definitely learned. And for the fifth and final thing that I learned is that if you're an independent game dev and you aspire to make games for a living or just for fun, then you need to practice on the basics in order to get your prototypes out faster. Now, this is big because your prototypes are the things that's going to allow you to QA test, and you allow your friends to QA test so you can see if it's fun. But the longer it takes you to build your prototype, the longer that idea has to just sit. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes when ideas just sit, you kind of lose interest in it. That initial flame and spark that you had, it just goes away. So the fifth tip that I had is just practice on the basics. And what I mean by the basics is animation blueprints. Get your animation right. You know what I'm saying? Get your character being able to walk within 5 to 10 minutes. Bring your character from your 3D software to your game dev engine in 5 to 10 minutes and make them walk. That should be a practice or an exercise that you do, so that once you do get good at that, you can bring in any character within 5-10 minutes. You can block out a level 5-10 minutes, and now you've got 5 to 10 more minutes to put your game mechanics in, or some simple game mechanics in, to see if it's fun. Like, the faster that you get with prototyping, the more efficient that you'll get with games. Now, those are my 5 tips that I wanted to share with you, and I've been learning those because I've been implementing these tips in some games that I've been making. And if you've been following my channel, I've been showing you the games that I've been making, and even in this video I was showing you clips of the games that I've been making. So take those tips to heart and continue being a beast game developer. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter where you're at right now. If you continue to go, you will get better and better and better. But I hope you learned something with these tips, and I'll holla at y'all next time. Peace.